He was an interesting dude. I'll tell you that commander, I learned a lot from him, mostly on understanding how to work with people who had that leadership style.
Right.
And his style, which I only realize in retrospect, was that if he made me feel threatened, like I had to constantly prove myself, that I would work really hard for him. Now, when he left and the new guy came in, he was all about, let's chat, let's discuss this thing. Oh, you don't like the edits that I'm suggesting on the press release that you want to send out? Tell me why these edits aren't right. Whereas, the other guy, he would send down edits, and it was all done by hand, by the way. We didn't have word processors and all that stuff. It was all typed on a manual typewriter. And he would send things down just bleeding with red ink, because he'd use that red pen, and I'd have to retype everything and send it back up. And most of the time his changes were wrong. So I would just send him back up another copy of the original version, and he would approve it, just because he had to show his muscle for the first time out. So the new guy comes in, he goes, I only need one copy of whatever you're sending up, but let's talk about it. And basically he said I trust you to do your job. You've been trained to do it. I haven't. I'm like, wow. So who do you think I worked harder for? I worked harder for the guy who showed me trust and believed in my abilities. I didn't work as hard for Commander Kaufman, because he was really, he was trying to threaten me to work.
You flipped him off all the time. It's basically behind his back.
Well, like I said, years later, I developed a respect for his style, and I got to understand it more.
Yeah, but it was not his style.
But it wasn't what I wanted to go through. Yeah. Commander Jennings, I worked really hard for.
Well, and I can see the difference. It's once, he realized, okay, everybody here has a job. They were trained for their job. I'm not supposed to teach them their job. They need to know their job. And it's my job to make sure I do my job, not oversee everybody else. That's the difference of what do they call that? Where you micromanage or not micromanage.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And as I've come up through over the years, working in different kinds of environments and for different kinds of bosses, I saw the kinds of behaviors that helped me stay motivated and that got me to work hard. And those are the behaviors that I chose to emulate as I became a leader. And now what I do is I work to train people to help them to become better leaders, to help them to determine which behaviors they want to emulate in their own leadership style.
And one last thing that I want to get into your other business. The thing about the Navy is there's two tracks. There's the line track, and then there's the medical field track. What I mean by that, because when I was in medical mobilization and planning, and my senior chief was a corpsman at one point, but he was smoking cigarettes in his office, and you'd come in there, he'd close the door, smoke cigarettes right in front of you, dying, you can whatever. But if your lieutenant he called you and you didn't jump as much as he rode you. Yeah. Then you go into when I went into physical therapy, and I had the same, commanders and whatever, they were totally different, because that's what I was talking about, the mass part. They were more, they understood, you knew your job, you do this, I come in, I sign it, and we move on. We all go have fun and do other stuff. I'm not having to oversee thousands and thousands of troops. I only have to see 5, so it's just depending on, and that's the difference. Is
my first chief was that way. My first chief was, and he was great.